What's up, guys? We are back with another video. It is New Year's Eve, and headed up to work, get a little bit of work done before some Chinese food and hanging out later tonight. Uh, and today we're gonna dive in a little bit to the totally uncontroversial topic that is totally dominating the news right now. That being immigration and the fraud being uncovered in Minnesota and elsewhere in the U.S. and what it means and what the solutions or potential solutions are and who are the various people involved in perpetuating it and defending it and all of that sort of stuff. So that's what we're going to get into today. If you haven't already, go to the YouTube to see full videos. I typically only post short clips from the YouTube to other platforms like Instagram. So yeah, go check out the YouTube. Just Skyler Carnes. It's KYLERKARNS. Yeah, so the big news cycle story that's playing out for the past few days right now is Nick Shirley's expose on the Somali daycare centers and healthcare centers in Minnesota. The basics of the story, if you haven't been following along, are that there are all of these Somali-run daycare centers and healthcare centers that are completely fraudulent tax-sucking fronts that are literally just being used as laundering operations for tax dollars. There have been some denials of this. I have seen no convincing denials of this. I've seen a lot of people trying to pretend that this is not occurring, that it's racist if you talk about it or if you call it out. And I think the last 10 years have shown that that is an ineffective strategy and that people are sick of that strategy being weaponized against them when talking about especially immigration issues. So, I think this has been a storm that's been building for a long time, really. That was one of the big selling points of both successful Trump presidential runs. And after the immigration issue getting worse during the Biden presidency, it's become a real selling point for this administration. And I think, in my opinion, the only campaign promise that has been kept to its desired level, as in like the base is pretty happy with the results, is closing the border. Now even that has been not fully handled the way that a lot of the base would like, because, for instance, Donald Trump was talking about amnesty at one point, and also the H-1Bs, and also the 600,000 Chinese students that apparently are propping up the university system. But forgetting about that for a minute, largely the base has been happy with the closing of the border, but I would say pretty unsatisfied with the level of deportations. And this Nick Shirley expose on the Minnesota fraud going on at the daycares and the Leering Center and these supposed healthcare centers, all of that taxpayer-funded fraud that's been occurring there is really adding fuel to the fire of demands for heightened levels of deportations, of denaturalization, of remigration, and of closing of the various loopholes that allow people to get citizenship or get visas or any of that stuff. Like, you know, I would say the base is demanding at this point that anchor babies is no longer a reason to grant citizenship. I tend to agree with that because it creates a lot of bad incentives. And also, like, the refugees just being not wanted anymore. There's a lot of data that backs this up, in my opinion. For instance, the fact that a majority of supposed refugees vacation in the place they were supposedly fleeing from. Sorry, but if that's what you're doing, you're not a refugee. Deport. And I think I'm kind of radical on this, in the state that I live in Massachusetts. But as far as radicalization goes of this issue, it is just beginning. It will get worse if none of these problems get solved. It will get worse if the left continues to run cover for these fraud schemes and make excuses for every bad action of every immigrant. And it will get worse if they continue to try to ram down more immigration down the throats of Americans. It's going to get worse. The reaction is going to get worse. And you can call names and say that it's xenophobic and it's bigoted and it's racist and blah, 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 blah. But you are the one that's, if you're supporting all these policies, if you're the one defending all these policies, if you're a person that's saying, the immigrants are more American than you, and, all this, then all right, but you're the one that's going to cause the problem down the line. People are fed up. If you believed in democracy, this is another interesting thing about it, is if you were so really, as a lot of these people claim, including the sort of moderate Republicans who have always allowed for amnesty, these Reagan Republicans. Reagan, mind you, was one of the first ones that, created policies that enshrined, amnesty for illegal immigrants. If you're one of these people, yet you claim to believe in democracy, which is the claim of every moderate in the country and the claim of every person on the left, then you should be against this mass flood of immigration, because if at any point the American people were voting directly on mass immigration, it would have failed. A majority of people in this country have never wanted mass immigration. Never. It's never been popular. It's always been voted against. It's literally the same thing as two of the only consistent policy choices that Americans have always been against is foreign policy interventionism, Like, people always vote for the peace president, whoever is claiming to be the peace candidate. People always vote for that, and they never get what they want. And the other thing that people always vote against is mass immigration policies, and they continue to be flooded by masses of immigrants, regardless of how they vote on it. So if you support mass immigration, yet you claim to be a democracy respecter, you're an entire hypocrite, whole hypocrite, because it's not popular with the American people. And if you believe in nationhood or sovereignty of the voter or any of that, you're literally just a hypocrite. So some things to keep in mind. Now, as far as the reporting coming out of Minnesota, it seems pretty solid, seems pretty obvious that this has been happening. And Minnesota is not the only place this is happening. It's obvious this is happening in Maine. It's obvious this has happened for decades in California. And it's obvious to me as a Massachusetts resident that it's been happening here. So this is a nationwide problem. There are people in the Trump administration who are acknowledging this reporting and saying that something will be done about it, including the vice president. However, we have seen from this administration that tweets do not equal policy being enacted. And so I'm in a wait and see mode. I think the base on the right is absolutely sick of all this performative crap online with the tweets, with the edits, with the hype edits. Oh, we're going to make a music video about deportations, and yet the deportation numbers suck. Like, we're over it, so you guys better get cooking, or there's going to be really bad voter turnout in midterms. You're going to get smoked, and then none of it's going to happen. So I'm in a wait and see mode on that. As far as what the policy should be right now, in my opinion, the border should be closed completely, for especially, with a focus on illegal immigration. But also, there should be a total moratorium on immigration for at least 5 years, in my opinion. Until we sort out what's happened to this country over the last 5, 10, 20 years, we should not continue to import people. Sorry, I know people will say, oh my God, that's so un-American, Ellis Island, Okay, sorry, but, almost none of these immigrants that are coming in today are assimilating at all. They are waving foreign flags. The people that are being elected from these communities are outright saying that their loyalty is to a foreign country and to their home ethnicity over Americans in America. So nope, over, done. Call it done for 5 years, and then we can reassess and see where we're at 5 years from now. I just think this position is untenable. We do not need more immigration right now. This used to be actually, like, leftists used to understand this. You can find clips of Bernie Sanders from, a decade ago saying that mass immigration was a billionaire policy enacted in order to get cheap foreign labor to do, to drive down costs for wealthy producers of goods and services. So this used to be understood on the left even. Bill Clinton was very tough on immigration compared to what we've had for the past 20 years. And so I really don't think it's that radical to say, hey, halt illegal immigration, obviously, deport illegal immigrants, obviously, and then we need like a moratorium on all immigration for like at least 5 years. So that's one of the obvious practical solutions that should be achieved immediately. Another one that's very obvious is if you come here and you are an immigrant, you should receive absolutely no taxpayer funded services at all. I know the left is crying right now. I know the bleeding hearts are bleeding out. I get it, but we don't care anymore. Nobody cares anymore. If you guys feel so strongly about it, there's this thing you could do called donating to charity, or you could create your own charity and figure out how to fund that voluntarily, not with people's stolen money. How about that? You could do that. How many of these bleeding hearts are opening up their home to immigrants? 0%? Statistically, 0 of them? Yep, that's how many. How many of them are, going to food banks, volunteering, any of that stuff? I don't know. It's under 5% though, guaranteed. So it's really easy to be charitable with other people's money, but no more. We're done with that. No thanks. All set. Another thing that should obviously be done is either remittances should be taxed so much that they essentially become not helpful. They should be outlawed entirely, or at the very least, if we're not going to cut these social services to immigrants, then remittances for anybody receiving social welfare of any type, remittances should be completely outlawed if you're receiving taxpayer funds for anything. These are all obvious policy choices that could be enacted that would have huge support. If you have enough money to send it back to your family overseas, then you should not be getting taxpayer support. And truthfully, you shouldn't be getting taxpayer support, period, if you're an immigrant. If you can't provide for yourself here and nobody will voluntarily give their money to have you here, then if we are living in a, even quasi-democratic system, then none of this would be occurring. So those are obvious things that should be done. In my opinion, I get that a lot of that is not popular, especially where I live, but these are just obviously things that should be done. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like what I think the current administration should do that's within the realm of possibility. Really what the problem is with this the whole relationship going on with this stuff is that there are benefits here that people from other countries want, and there are like NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are set up as charities, but they're in fact actually just government funded organizations. So they're non-governmental, as in they're not an entity that exists within the government officially, but if they can only exist through taxpayer funding, then they are essentially a government organization. So these should be all shut down and investigated, as far as, they are they're the purveyors of how this is happening and how it's happened for decades. And they should be completely shut down. And the way to do that is cutting off funding. And that needs to happen. If we don't defund these NGOs that only exist based on taxpayer funds, then this will never get solved long term. The networks of NGOs that facilitate this happening are the reason that it happens. Now, so those are kind of like the obvious practical solutions to policy that could be changed right now. How do I think immigration should work ideally long term? Because I am not a no immigration absolutist. And truthfully, 5 years ago, I barely cared about immigration as an issue. It's not really what I care about normally, under normal circumstances, under this sort of like, you know, idea that there's a set number of immigrants that we have coming in and it's low. It's not, 10% of the population every decade or something like that. It's like a realistic number. Under these normal conditions, I'm not anti-immigration absolutist. But there's some obvious things that need to happen if this is ever going to return to some level of normalcy. And most of the policy proposals from current politicians are just band-aids at best. And they don't really do anything to solve the crisis long term. So I would say that one of the things that you could really do there's a couple policies long term that I think would be really beneficial to creating a good incentive structure for getting the right type of immigrants. And what I mean by the right type of immigrants is immigrants who actually want to assimilate and become Americans, immigrants who are not here to leech off the domestic population and not here to reap the benefits of what the domestic population has built over generations. People who actually strive and want to become Americans, not people that are waving their home country's flag and talking about how their allegiance is to their own ethnicity. So one of these is there's a libertarian thinker named Hans Hermann Hoppe, and he's kind of like a very polarizing figure within the libertarian movement because he is a very right-wing libertarian. And his proposal to the immigration problem is that in order for an immigrant to come in or a family of immigrants to come in, you need some sort of essentially like a stewardship program or like a vouching program where a current citizen, family or person, individual, whatever, essentially becomes on the hook for this immigrant family. Like, you're essentially a sponsor for this immigrant family. Now, what does that entail? That entails if they need help with housing, you're responsible for figuring out how to help with housing. If they need job help, you're responsible for figuring out how to get them jobs. If they need welfare of any kind, you're responsible for the welfare, not the general taxpayer. And this also would include if they do some criminal act once they're in the country, you become liable for the criminal act. And this obviously makes it much harder for people to immigrate here. However, it means that it instills a certain sense of responsibility of these bleeding heart people that if they believe so strongly in immigration, well, then you should be willing to become a sponsor. And also, it would create very good incentives for the families that immigrate to be self-sufficient, to provide for themselves, to assimilate as quickly as possible, all of this stuff. So that's my proposal for how it works. That's the best way to do immigration, in my opinion, that doesn't violate the sovereignty of American citizens who don't want mass immigration, is you put current citizens on the hook for anyone who wants to become an American. Something else that I think should obviously well, a couple of things here. So one more thing that I think should be done. I guess both of these could be. They're not realistic policy proposals at the moment, but they should be, obviously, in my opinion. Is first generation immigrants should not be able to hold public office ever. Like, if you weren't born here, you should not hold public office at any level ever. I know that that's unpopular in my state. I don't care. It is what it is. That's where I'm at with it. And not only that, I don't think that first generation immigrants should be able to vote in any public elections at all, period. I don't think they should be able to. I know that's probably super controversial for a big percentage of people that I'm probably talking to that are going to hear this. I don't care. I don't think I think if you want to create good incentives for people to immigrate, the incentive should be that you're going to plant a tree whose shade you don't get to sit in. If your home situation is so bad that you need to be a refugee and come to this country, then you should have no say over the changes made in this country, because you're fleeing somewhere much worse to come to a system you had no part in building, and then you want to have the same amount of say as somebody who's lived here their whole life, who was born here and their grandparents were born here and their great-great-grandparents were born here, and you want to have the same amount of say as them over the changes in this country. Meanwhile, where you're from is so awful that you had to come here. Nope, sorry, you should have no say over how this country's run. At all. I don't feel like that's extreme at all. And then, so if you came here because you were in such a dire situation that you needed to flee your home country, be happy with this country granting you refugee status. And be happy that maybe your kids, if they were born here once you became a full-time resident, not like some anchor baby situation, but be happy that they may be able to become citizens someday. You shouldn't be able, I'm at that point too. I don't think if you immigrate here and you weren't born here, you should never become a citizen. Ever. Your kids, maybe. You should be doing it because you want better for your kids. And if you don't have that incentive, then I don't know. I just think, I think, like I said towards the beginning of this video, the longer these changes are not made, the uglier the solutions to these problems is going to get. If you're not willing to acknowledge that reality, you are living in a delusion, and it is what it is, I guess. I just think it's very obvious. Public opinion is really souring on this. And if you're so concerned about, people being bigoted or xenophobic or racist or anything like that, if you're really concerned about that, then you should listen to people, because they're not going to get less extreme about this issue if you continue down the road that we've been on. So that's something to think about. I know I'll probably get a ton of disagreement. That's fine. If you've got disagreement, if you've got a better policy proposal, whatever, throw a comment. Let me know. Let me know how much you hate what I said, all of that. But this is a problem that's not going away on its own. So if your solution is to say, no illegal immigration, you can't be an illegal on stolen land, all right, good luck with that. This is really a bad policy, and people are over it. And so that sentiment is going to continue to decline in approval. And like I said, the longer you try to enforce this sort of multicultural, like, and it's not even something that people want. It's like forcing Americans to be on the hook for everyone in a bad situation in the whole world. And if you want to continue that, you are engendering a really, really ugly reaction down the road. That's the reality of it. If you don't understand that, you are living in a fantasy. So anyway, guys, that is the rant for today. That's my sort of broad view of immigration. I am very interested to see how these continuing investigations are going to go. And I think this is truthfully just the tip of the iceberg. So I guess we will see where it goes. Like I said, follow the YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, share it around, send hate mail, do all that stuff. Boost me in the algos. Hate mail boosts me too, dude. So do all of that, and I'm gonna make I just actually made a new Instagram. I'd been using my personal Instagram for a long time, but I just made a new one that I will be posting clips on and focusing completely on sort of politics, culture, economics. So go check that one out. It's Skyler, SKYLER _Carns, KARNS. Go follow that. Go follow the YouTube, and I'll talk to you soon. Later.